That's what I'm talking about. Dude, that is a big snake. I don't know where you got that. Dude, we should totally... If anybody knows where we could get some rattlesnake meat...
Boom.
Dude, if I got some friends in Texas. East Tennessee, I got some friends in East Tennessee. I should see if I can hook us up with some rattlesnake meat. Grill some snake for Snake on the Table. Hello, friends. My name's Tanner Cartwright. I'm here with Dorris. This is Snake on the Grill.
That's awesome. Give that a quick sear.
Sear them bad boys.
It's got a searing station on here, so it can get a good sear, and then we'll pull it off to the side, let it go slow.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So what are we doing? You got a snake for us?
Yeah, there's a couple of them we could do. Let's do. This is one we've talked about quite a bit. Is it biblical for a married couple to purposefully avoid children?
Okay.
We've had that on our list for a while. So is it biblically permissible for a married couple to purposefully avoid children?
That's a tough question, brother. I mean...
No, it's not.
Well, I mean, I understand. I mean, the answer is yeah, or they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Because we have a command, and we would believe that the command to be fruitful and multiply still applies. That hasn't gone away.
Well, that, and not only that, but I would argue, as our 1689 states, that there's three purposes for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That one of them is mutual help or companionship would be another way to phrase that. Legitimate procreation of children, meaning we're married and they're legitimate children, not bastard children. We're legitimately producing children.
Yeah.
And preventing sexual uncleanness is how the 689 puts it.
Yeah.
So those are our three biblical, those are the three reasons from Scripture that we see for marriage.
Yeah.
And so I would argue that if you take any one of those and purposefully avoid it, you are harming your marriage. You're doing something that God made marriage for these three reasons, and you're removing one intentionally.
Yeah.
So, for example, no one would argue that you could have a marriage and remove mutual help, remove companionship. I guess maybe some people would, but the idea that you could have a healthy marriage and purposefully not be mutually helping one another.
Yeah.
And so I would argue that it would be. That's what I'm talking about. Dude, that is a big snake. I don't know where you got that. Dude, we should totally. If anybody knows where we could get some rattlesnake meat.
Boom.
Dude, if I got some friends in Texas, East Tennessee. I got some friends in East Tennessee. I should see if I can hook us up with some rattlesnake meat. Grill some snake for Snake on the Table. But yeah, so I think the problem is, and the reason that this is an uncomfortable question is because the church has followed the culture, in that it's just kind of become natural now. We've got the pill, or we've got different contraceptions. We've got, cheap, easy means. Those means I would say are unbiblical on their own grounds because most of them, if not all, fall under the category of abortifacient. But even legitimate ways of avoiding children that we have in the modern day, it's so easy and convenient to avoid children. It's actually possible nowadays.
Yeah.
And so that being the case...
So in decades and years past, it would be not possible unless you're not having sex.
Or very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, very difficult because most methods that don't involve some sort of technology, some sort of innovation, older methods wouldn't have really worked.
I think this would be good for us to get into that topic in this episode because we're talking about kids and controlling the number of kids you have.
Sure.
So let's talk about dinks. Which are dual income, no kids.
Yep.
That is a godless.
It's a movement. Yeah.
Yeah. That
it's
is
the most appropriately named thing ever.
Yeah, you're a dink. That is a godless. You're not following what the Lord commands.
Yeah.
You are to procreate. You are
and
to
the
have
movement
children.
is all about we get to do what we want to do. You'll see these videos of people.
It's all about it's selfishness.
We get to spend our money on whatever. We get to go to Disneyland for cheap or whatever the stupid thing is.
Yeah.
And so that's in our modern day. So
A steak should be thick enough that you can turn it on its side and it stay upright.
100%.
Yeah, I just want to get that fat side good.
But it does get into the issue of is it okay to space children, or is it okay to control in any level how many children you have?
I think that's a different topic.
But it gets into it's related.
Yeah, I agree.
So
definitely related.
Because what we're not saying is that it's never okay for health reasons or what have you.
Yeah, no.
For a husband and a wife to say we need space.
Yeah, we need a space. We need a break.
Yes.
Emotionally, just be prepared again instead of just getting pregnant again and again. Over and over and over again. I think there is a call for that, but that's when we get into the types of methods that you would use to not have children.
Yes.
And so I think we would argue that the barrier method is an acceptable method. But to be careful of IUD and different contraceptives that are also abortifacient.
They're not labeled as abortifacient.
Yeah,
but they are abortifacient.
A lot of birth control, they prevent implantation, and that's different.
And the medical community classifies implantation as the moment of conception.
Yeah, and so we would argue that it's not.
Conception begins at fertilization.
Fertilization.
That's a human life. Yeah,
and that's just keeping the egg and the sperm separate.
Yeah,
is necessary there. But scripturally, the mandate to have children is given from God because we're to subdue, we're to be fruitful, we're to multiply. And as I often talk about this with our youth and stuff like that, is that multiplication is God's way of increasing image bearers in the world, and it's our duty to do that.
Increasing His worship.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the church has lost, we used to think like this, but the way that the gospel is spread to more people, the most effectively is through having children and discipling them and catechizing them and teaching them.
Yeah, exactly.
Way more than
any other method.
We're all about preaching the gospel. I mean, we preach the gospel, weekly. We go on the streets. I'm super excited about Thunder Over Louisville is going to happen here in a couple weeks, which is our biggest evangelism event of the year. Absolutely my favorite one that we do. I'm thinking through what I'm going to preach on even now, but and we want that, and we believe the church is commanded and called to do that.
Right.
And yet, the most effective way for spreading the gospel all over the world is by having children and being faithful and faithfully teaching them, 100%. Catechizing.
You're going to have more impact on this world by having children and teaching them from youth how to love the Lord and proclaim the gospel.
There's a modern idea that women should. It would be more, maybe not heroic, but I think we do think of it that way. But it'd be more heroic or more godly to not have children and go to the mission field, or stay single and go to the mission field.
Yeah.
And I am fully convinced that the most effect, especially that a young woman can have, is to have children and to raise them faithfully to serve the Lord.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
that gets into another episode that we want to do.
We'll do that one.
So now somebody's watching this and they can't have children.
Yep.
And now they're feeling like they're somehow deficient, or they haven't,
or their marriage is deficient.
Yeah, because
it's like, well, God gave us 3 reasons for marriage, and we're lacking one.
We're not able to have this.
Yes.
And I would argue, no. See, every conception is a gift from the Lord.
Yes.
Every baby is a gift from the Lord. And if He has providentially prevented you from having children, that's His prerogative.
Yep.
And that doesn't make you deficient. It doesn't make you, that somehow there's something wrong with you or anything like that. I think you should be trying to figure out what those things are. We live in a modern world where we can determine, if there's some issues that, there are chemical imbalances. There's different things that may be causing those kind of things. That God is using.
But it doesn't mean you don't have a legitimate marriage. And in the same way that if 2 people got married, to purposefully avoid intimacy would be you wouldn't have a complete marriage.
Right.
To purposefully avoid that. But if you're married and you're in a wreck or something and then you can't, you're not purposely avoiding it. Yeah. God has removed removed it for a time or whatever.
That's a different.
That's in His sovereignty, and we trust Him. You still have a legitimate marriage.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be purposefully removing these purposes for marriage as if we're God, as if we're the ones in control.
So I think a lot of people think, well, we're not financially ready. We shouldn't What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if an Ethiopian, I've talked to an Ethiopian guy that lived in a hut with his two little babies, 3 and under, and for them, he couldn't feed the ones he had.
Yeah,
literally couldn't feed them. Like, we took him a bag of rice because he couldn't feed them. And that is maybe in that situation, but there's no one in America in that situation.
Yeah, we've
literally nobody, and then don't even be offended at that. It's just not a thing.
One of the things we talk about a lot is that the Bible presents children as wealth.
Yep.
And if they're wealth, then when I have children, I'm a wealthy man. So the idea of I can't afford them, maybe your priorities are out of whack.
Yep.
Because you should be prioritizing having children. And
so it gets into a problem in our modern world is that we have created children and raised children to be consumers, not producers.
Yeah.
Which makes them miserable, frankly. But when you raise children to be productive and producers, yes, children are a lot of work. I've got 7. Don't even talk to me. Like, I get it. They're a lot of work. I'm not denying that. But if you raise them to be productive and to be disciplined and to be, if you train them up in the right way and teach them to work, your children will produce so much more than you ever poured into them.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not even close.
Yeah.
And so even from the standpoint, I was talking to my dad one day. My dad is on track to have probably near 50 grandchildren and at least 40, and Lord willing. And when he is in his older years, he'll want for nothing.
Yeah.
And so there is, he will never have to worry about his wife being taken care of or his, whatever it may be. He is always going to have, he's got 10 granddaughters right now. He's never going to have to worry about being taken care of.
Right.
And that is wealth. In the old, when Psalm 127 was written, and it said, that he will not, he'll not be ashamed before his enemies in the gate.
Resting.
You got to let it rest, dude.
Yeah.
It's the secret. I didn't know it for years, but you got to let him rest. But he'll not be ashamed when he stands before his enemies, because the Lord has blessed him with children.
Yeah.
And now all of his sons are defending him. And so he doesn't have to worry about his enemies, because it's like, look at all.
So we're not advocating for just have children for children's sake.
No.
We're talking about, as believers, we are to have children and to raise them to their image bearers, to raise them to worship Christ, to know Christ, to be productive in themselves, follow in that footsteps. We often talk about generational knowledge, generational wealth.
Yep.
We're wanting to raise, as we shepherd young couples, we're wanting them to have a vision to raise their children, to raise children, to start businesses that support the community, that support each other, to have wealth that they pass on to their children and their children's children.
Yep.
As we're just continuing that vision, and that slow expanse, that has an effect on culture and society and all those things.
I use my father as an example when I talk about this, because he had kind of raised in the very evangelical light type world.
Yeah.
And they had decided not to have kids.
Right.
He wasn't going to have kids. And then the Lord blessed him with 6 sons and changed his heart, changed his mind on all of that. And now, going from 2 people, there are almost 40 people.
Yeah.
From that. And you just think about, just politically, we live in we don't live in a large town, but now all of a sudden, instead of him, having 1 vote or 2 votes with him and his wife, now he literally has a tribe.
Because their worldview is shaped by his.
He has directly affected the worldview of like 40 people at this point.
Well, and more than that, because he owns a business, and you own a business, and you employ people, and and then when you go through, those people look up to you. People come to you. You're a pastor in the community. You've got 300 people at a church that come to you and want wisdom, and so that one man has now affected an entire community.
Yep.
And that's amazing.
It's huge, and it's just.
And I think people have lost that vision.
Yep.
The dinks have lost that vision. It's just pure selfishness. It's just about what they want in this life right now, and they're not thinking about what honors God, and what brings glory to His name, and they're not thinking about the impact that they can have. What a no impact life.
Yeah. Well, you can have some impact,
but it's
it's
so
minimal compared to what it could be.
So minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So, but yeah, I would argue that it is unbiblical to purposefully avoid children. But that doesn't mean everyone has to have 7. Doesn't mean everyone has to have 13.
Yeah.
It just, different people, God gives different people different numbers. And, I was raised in a group of people that, 6 kids they're like, man, mom and dad, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
We didn't have, it was
how this works?
We were a small family, So, which is always kind of fun.
You're already at 7 now, right?
I've got 7. I have another brother who has 7.
Yeah.
And so, and my dad still has a son unmarried.
Yep.
So it just
he's really young, ladies. Really young.
Just
he
hold
ain't
up.
Ready.
Yeah,
he needs about 5 years.
At least.
He's ready. All right. My meter here is telling me that this is ready. So
all right.
Let's end this.
Don't avoid children.
Yeah, if you've got a question for us, you can write to snakeonthetable.com. Go to the bottom, fill out the form, and we won't know who you are. You can ask any question you want. God bless.
God bless. What, the basketball got loud, didn't it?
I know, right?